Right, this section is called about confusion of the inverse. Now this occurs when people assume that the probability of event B occurring following event A is the same as the probability of event A occurring following event B. Since event A and event B can have two different sets of numbers in which the event can occur, we cannot assume that these two amounts are the same because the order of events matters. Now let's take a look at an example to take that rather abstract statement and put it with an exact problem to follow this through. So this is looking at problem number 22 on page 173. And the first part we have here is finding the probability of having negative test results when the subject does not use drugs. Okay, now again, we're using our intuitive approach here for solving the problem, right? So we go through and we look first at subject not a drug user, right? So we follow that out and we get our 950. That's the total number of people who are not a drug user, because remember, that's what we've set it up for our conditional probability, right? And then we see that within that, the probability of getting negative test results is 860, right? So here, so far, we're looking at our basic conditional probability we've already done. So we get 0.905. Now, let's look at the inverse of that. So here we're looking at the probability of a subject not using drugs given that they have negative test results. So notice we've changed the order of events here when we solve this intuitively. You notice if we start eliminating at first the number of individuals who have negative test results, that gives us a different total number of possible events. So here, our denominator is 866. Notice in the one above, the denominator was 950. So, although we still have 860 people within this that have true negatives, right? That's what we're looking at. So a person does not use drugs given that they got negative test results. Notice that the number that goes in the denominator is very different, which gives us a different probability. Notice that 0.905 is not the same probability as 0.993. So, the lesson to keep in mind with the confusion of the inverse is the order of events matters. Do not assume that once you found the probability, for example here, of negative test results, given that the subject does not use drugs, that is going to be the same amount as if you change those order of operations. So with the confusion of the inverse, be very careful to pay attention to the order of operations. This goes back again to what I've talked with you guys repeatedly as we've gone through these lectures and these sections. The numbers and plugging the numbers into the formula are often the easiest part of the project. The first part is clearly delineating what kind of problem you've got, what is it actually asking for you to solve for. With conditional probabilities, we need to be paying attention to what parts of the data are we removing, which ones are we focusing on for this particular problem, right? And then you need to pay attention, as we can see here, in the order of events. So, as you're going through and doing your problems for your homeworks and on the exam, just remember to take your time and delineate out first clearly what you are solving for. This is also going to be very important on the exam and as you prep for the exam. So, students who do well in the homeworks and then do not do well in the exams, what I usually find is that they have set up a good job of going through their homeworks, but when they were done with them, they did not finish that up with setting up a final clear set of notes for how to solve each type of problem that they could carry forward on the exam. It's clear to them right now, you're going, okay, this is fine, I've got it, and you move on. However, you need to be asking yourself a further question before you finish with a section and go, am I going to be able to come back to this 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks later and be able to solve the same kind of problem looking at what I have written down? Or am I going to find that I have insufficient information for myself to be able to follow my previous steps for solving the problem? So be thinking about that as we're prepping for the next exam, which is coming up in 2 weeks. So start thinking of that and going back and looking at your notes and looking as you're doing your homeworks, and pay attention to where you need to add in further steps for yourself and clear outlines of what you're doing step by step so that you can carry your comprehension from your homeworks onto your exams several weeks later.